White people are not really white, but colored people can sometimes be extremely colored. In Negro speech, the word colored has very special reverberations. One may hear in sorrow, man, that cat's just too colored. And this can mean, depending on the speaker, the situation, the subject, that the cat under discussion is coarse, overbearing, incompetent, and so uncertain of his value that he's perpetually adopting the most outrageous and transparent affectations. This is one of the meanings of color in the psyche and the experience of the American Negro. But the same phrase can also be applied to someone who is direct, warm, unaffected, and unconquerable. Someone who, like Duke Ellington, is able to move without missing a beat or manifesting the slightest uneasiness from Harlem cornbread to Buckingham Palace caviar and back again, ad infinitum. The Duke knows who is man, which reveals another aspect of the meaning of color among people who constitute America's most tenacious and problematical minority. At bottom, to be colored means that one has been caught in some utterly unbelievable cosmic joke, a joke so hideous and in such bad taste that it defeats all categories and definitions. One's only hope of supporting, to say nothing of surviving, this joke is to flaunt in the teeth of it one's own particular and invincible style. It is at this turning, this level, that the word colored, ravaged by experience and heavy with the weight of particular spoils, returns to its first meaning, which is not Negro, the Spanish word for black, but vivid, many-hued, e.g. the rainbow, and warm and quick and vital, e.g. life. How hard it is, though, to speak of Negro life in these terms, Negroes being so bitterly maligned and so brutally penalized for those very qualities of color which have helped them to endure. The Puritan dictum still inhabit and inhibit the American body and soul. Joy and sin have been synonyms here for so many generations that the former can now be defined only on the therapeutic, i.e., pragmatic grounds, necessitating a similar metamorphosis for the latter. Now it is suggested that we live a little in order not to become too dangerously disturbed. But no one has suggested, I would like to think, that no one has dared such a formula to Negroes who do not yet dance or make love as a way of supporting mental health, and who are indeed, in the main, thank heaven, incapable of making so diluted a connection. They have seen too many dancers, to say nothing of lovers, swept straight into the madhouse. Dancing and love are meant to seem effortless, but are very difficult and dangerous activities. To suggest that joy can be present in any way, on any level of Negro life, offends, of course, immediately, all of our social and sentimental assumptions. Joy is the fruit of Yankee thrift and virtue and makes its sweet appearance only after a lifetime of cruel self-denial and invertebrate money-making. On the other hand, such a suggestion immediately justifies the immorality, the inequity of our social regulations. If the Negro is happy in his place, as we still would only be too delighted to believe, then it becomes in us a virtue not only to keep him there, but to frustrate for the sake of his continued happiness and the protection of our property and our profits any attempt of his rise out of it. Well, the Negro is not happy in his place, and white people aren't happy in their place either. Two very intimately related facts, but the unhappiness of white people seems never to rattle and resound more fiercely than in their pleasure mills. The world that mainly frequents white nightclubs seems afflicted with a strange uncertainty as to whether or not they are really having fun. They keep peeping at each other in order to find out. One's aware, in an eerie way, that there are barriers which must not be crossed, and that by these invisible barriers, everyone is mesmerized. But it is quite impossible to discover where, in action, these barriers are to be found. Nothing matches the abandon of those struggling to be free of invisible chains, who wish at the same time to remain socially safe, and nothing matches the joylessness either. In an uptown club, the invisible chains are mighty and the barriers are innumerable. But everyone in the club lives too intimately with these impassable barriers of all kinds to need to watch them. They know exactly where the barriers are, and they would like simply, for a little while, to forget them. Again, they are threatened in so many ways that they cannot conceivably be threatened by anything that happens at the club. Violence is always a possibility, of course, but the point is that it is always a possibility, and one has had to learn to live with it. It is almost impossible to be threatened by social or sexual insult, the very style of Harlem Negroes being a kind of a distillation and transcendence of all kinds of insults that they daily receive. And the necessity of a personal style, no matter how upsetting, is too well understood for anyone to be mocked for their clothes or their manner, unless, of course, either of these is considered too slavish to an imitation of white people. Everything done by Negroes in this country is, in a way, done in imitation of white people, but everything depends on the manner and intention and the degree of hard-headedness. A girl wearing a mink, or more probably a minkette, is admired for having achieved it in the first place. One assumes it could not have been easy. But she is pitied and despised if she supposes her minkette is her passport out of the black world. Girls who have ceased doing whatever it is that American Negroes girls do to their hair and allowed it to resume its natural texture are very strongly admired in some circles, but looked on with some nervousness in most. Such a girl is no longer merely colored, but somewhere else. She poses in her presence by all that triumphantly kinky hair, the great problem of just who the American Negro is and what his future is to be. Women are able, of course, to say, well, I like it on her, but I don't know if it would suit me. But Negro men are intimidated in another way altogether, having despised women with kinky hair for so long. And they are told, you've been so brainwashed by the white man, you even wanted your women to look white. And this is not quite true, of course. So many of our women having been fairly white when they got here. But on the other hand, it is true enough. And toward what standard of beauty ought black people now turn, especially as they exemplify in themselves so many different standards? The entire scene is rich and funny and sad, and both bound and free, like the heavy and resplendent matron wearing a complete Easter outfit, from head almost to toe, but with her shoes in her hand and her slippers on her feet. She had the shoes, and she wanted everybody to know it, but her feet hurt, and she didn't care who knew that. The atmosphere of a Harlem nightclub is curiously misleading because of the simplicity of the white world's assumption. Color, for anyone who uses it or is used by it, is a most complex, calculated, and dangerous phenomenon. One will probably find more color in Small's Paradise, for example, even on the off night, than I, anyway, have usually managed to encounter in any nightclub downtown. It is not that their music is intrinsically so much better, always, but the people playing it and the people hearing it have more fun with it and with each other. They know, on one level, everything concerning each other that there is to know. They are all black. And this produces an atmosphere of freedom, which is exactly as real as the limits which have made it necessary. And what they don't know about each other, like who works where or who sleeps with whom, doesn't matter. No one gives a damn. And this allowed everyone to be himself at the club. No one gives a damn because they know exactly how rough it is out there when the club gates close. And while they are dancing and listening to the music and drinking and joking and laughing with all their finery on and looking so bold and free, they know who enters, who leaves, and on what errands. They are aware of the terrible and unreachable forces which yet rule their lives. In years past, and sometimes even now, musicians said for them what they themselves could not say and helped them endure the unendurable. But nothing is static. Now, unless Ray Charles or Nina Simone is down the street at the Apollo, one would have to go downtown to hear them. And not many of Harlem's Negroes go downtown for their entertainment because they do not feel welcome there. The comparison between the relative spontaneity and freedom of whites and blacks is falsely stated. There are some relatively free and spontaneous white people, not very many, and some relatively free and spontaneous Negroes, not, in my experience, very many more. A person's freedom can only be judged in terms of his flexibility, his openness towards life. It is not his situation what makes him free, but himself. Some rarer people become free through oppression. Most do not. Some people, at least equally rare, release themselves from the delusion that they were born free and go on to establish an approximation of that personal order which allowed them to become so. Most people are not able to look at each other as human beings, and in spite of everything, to treat each other that way. Until this happens, freedom is only an empty word. In the meantime, what's once contrasting is a matter of style, i.e. ways of life, and contrasting these, moreover, in their most public manifestations. The atmosphere of a Harlem nightclub must be different from that of the Copacabana because of the way of life which has produced it and peculiar needs it serves. White nightclubs do not draw people from a community, but from all over a peculiar country. And white people are isolated from each other in their nightclubs as they are all over America in their daily lives. The nightclub being no place to establish a human relationship, they walk out as untouched as they were when they walked in. It is this cumulative and grinding inability to reach out to others which makes nightclub life downtown so grim. But it is because Negroes are yet so shackled in this world's chains, and because the world looks on them with such guilt, that they seem freer in their pleasures than white people do. White Americans know very little about pleasure because they are so afraid of pain. But people dulled by pain can sing and dance till morning and find no pleasure in it.